While the hosts of Sisters in Arms have taken every precaution to ensure that the content of this program is both current and accurate, errors can occur. The hosts assume no responsibility or liability for any errors or omission in the content of this program.
The information contained in this program is provided on an as-is basis with no guarantee of completeness or accuracy. The opinions of the guests are not necessarily the same as the hosts.
Welcome to Sisters in Arms. I'm Carrie Ann Auclair.
And I'm Renee Gagne, and together we serve as a Second Amendment resource for the communities of Massachusetts.
And today we have Jim Wallace back in the house.
Again.
In the house.
Yeah. So Jim Wallace is the director of GOAL, Gun Owners Action League, and we're here talking about the listening tour that we had attended at the Cape on February 9th. And I think
Otherwise known as Big Jim, because Little Jim just, no, not going to fly, so stick with it, right?
Yeah. You want to actually explain what the listening tour was all about and how that got started?
You're just assuming that anybody knows what it's all about. So pretty much what has happened is Bruins spooked the State House. And across the country, you saw states like California, New Jersey, New York, literally pulled tantrums. And I explain it as they were emulating Governor Wallace of Alabama after Brown v. Board of Education. Exactly how they acted. Not in my state. You won't tell us what we can do. You know, we love our gun laws.
Tantrum.
And you gotta realize that there's only 5 or 6 states left in the country that think like that. The rest have given up on gun control because they know it doesn't work. So anyway,
And we're one of them.
And we're one of them.
Stuck in
Woo! So the speaker has tasked the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Michael Day, to do a top-down review of the state's gun laws. So they're doing a so-called listening tour, and they're going to be going across the state. We've been told that they're going to try to do one a month, and each one will have a specific topic. Like the ones you went to were on suicide prevention, right? So they're supposedly going to do some on crime, on, I don't know, domestic violence, but they haven't announced it yet. They got kind of off to a rocky start because they rushed it, and they really didn't notify anybody. We only found out about it 4 days before.
Right.
We only found out about it because GOAL put a
Right.
A newsletter.
Yeah,
An
yeah,
emergency
and
email.
we put out a lot of talking points for people on questions to ask, and so that's what's happening. Now, if it's truly a top-down review, we look forward to it. Bring it on.
Well, my question
So-
is, we were there. That was
Yeah.
the first kickoff. We were there, and there were no experts.
No.
There were no
No.
experts there to speak on
No.
behalf
Yeah,
of.
on the panel,
And
which I thought was kind of
it
like,
was
what?
a disservice. It really, truly was.
Well, what most people don't realize, even the people who so-called support these laws, they really have no concept of how complex they are.
No.
As a matter of fact, I sat on a commission after the 2014 bill was passed, after Newtown, which is some of what you just talked about on the last show. Okay, how can you be a good Samaritan? Somebody's in trouble. How do you help them with their guns? It took an entire commission, like 6 months, to go over this. And the irony was, some of the moms who support these laws were at the meeting, and they got so frustrated. They said, we don't understand with what we're trying to do now. Why can't we do this? Because of our strict gun laws. Why are they a problem? And even the chief on the commission's like, well, welcome to our world.
yeah, so that's Moms Demand Action.
Yeah, you
you're talking
created
about.
this world.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Right.
Right.
And they wanted, oh no, so they should just be exempt because they're trying to help. No.
Right.
You created these laws, live with them.
Right.
So anyway, there's only a handful of us in the state that have a good grasp of these things. And even us, after 25 years, still have discussions all the time. John Green, our trainer, we will sit at the desk in the office and go, what does this section mean? And, well, it means, are you sure? I don't know. I'm looking at this a different way. Because I'll always play devil's advocate, because my concern is, don't be the test case.
Right.
Your family's gonna be destroyed because you had no idea you're doing something wrong.
Right.
You know,
They
so
make it so hard
you
where
can't.
it's just, it's
You
it's
cannot comply. You
No.
can't. Even if you want to, you can't, because you're gonna find out you're doing something wrong. So literally, the there's a chief, a retired chief, that gives classes and publishes a book on what you need to know as a mass gun owner. That book is 420 pages long. There's no way. Can you imagine if you had to do that for a driver's license?
No.
No. So they're ineffective, they're convoluted, and they're actually punitive.
Right.
So they don't reduce crime. We know that.
Right.
You know, since they were enacted in '98, gun-related homicides en masse up 111%. But they keep trying to compare themselves to other states. Look how much better we are. But they don't want to look at the vast increases of suicide, homicide.
Right.
We don't have a problem with gun-related accidental deaths. We never have. Maybe 2 a year. And yeah, two's too much. But we don't even know if those are lawful gun owners.
Right.
You know,
That's true.
it could be a criminal who's too stupid to know how to safely use a gun, and Darwin has a party, right? So, you know, so it's just that they don't want to talk about comparing Massachusetts to Massachusetts 25 years ago because they know what the answer is.
Right.
Right.
So, yeah, if truly, again, if it's going to be a top-down review, bring it on.
Right.
Let's put the book down and go line by line and go over everything.
I think when we went to the listening tour, we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know if we were going to have a bunch of people yelling at us because we were walking in with, you know, our DC shirts and we looked professional with the jackets on and everything else. I mean, it was obvious we were,
Because teal is real.
you know,
Teal is real.
tactical
Tactical
teal.
teal is in.
There you go. See? Tactical teal.
And it was really awesome to see that there was about, I would say 85%, wouldn't you say, of people there discussing firearms. It's like they all printed out your talking points because they all were educated. They all had something to say that meant something.
Yeah,
that
it wasn't just,
you know,
"Ah."
it wasn't
No,
like,
it was really good.
you know.
It was respectful. I will say, I will give that forum
But
that
here's the
much
question,
credit.
though.
Right.
Who were you testifying to?
Right.
Right.
There was nobody on that panel that
No.
makes these decisions.
No, that was my question. When
Yeah.
the drive home, we were like, what was that?
Yeah.
What really did we accomplish?
Yeah.
I mean, we accomplished some good stuff because we parked ourselves at the exit and met a lot of great people
Yep,
and
and
a
we
lot
put
of great
ourselves
resources.
right in the front.
Passed out
Yep.
our cards
It's like,
because
what's it's Kabuki Theater? What was that? You know?
Though
So-
I think there was one, there was two speakers. It was a lot of speakers, but there was two of them that actually stood out for me. One was a young lady who lost her sister to suicide, and her whole entire speech was so powerful.
it was about 6 minutes long.
Oh, it was
It was
6
awesome.
minute long, and basically she said that, you know, her sister lost her life from suicide and she used a gun, and she realized that it wasn't the gun, it's the mental health. And she said if it wasn't the gun, she was going to find something else to, you know, and she did ask the panel questions about, you know, how can people get more help? The resources out there are there, but there is not enough. And so,
Well, as you two know, because sometimes I get questioned, well, you're the gun guy. What do you care about this? Well, as you know, I lost my great nephew, 15 years old,
I know.
to suicide by hanging. So, and after the Newtown massacre, I was one of the only, probably the only Second Amendment community person nationwide that wanted to talk. Everybody else was scared to death to talk. And I said, no, they need to hear this.
Right.
They need to hear that the people committing these absolute atrocities are suffering from severe, undiagnosed, untreated mental illness.
Right.
And I actually ended up doing, I think my staff said in 2 months I did 150 interviews worldwide.
Wow.
I had countries calling. The only one I turned down was a radio request for a 3 a.m. Jamaica. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm good. So it was imperative to talk about that.
right.
And I learned so much because I was talking. I was getting desperate emails from perfect strangers all over the country.
Wow.
Can you help me? I have my nephew, my son, my daughter, whatever, begging for help. And it hit me so hard that here I am, the Second Amendment community advocate, and it's so bad out there mental health-wise. People are reaching to me for help. All right, that became a mission.
Yeah.
That became
it's
a
big
mission.
problem.
So And, you know, we've dealt with everything from soldiers coming home that know if they seek help, their careers are over. You know, people that have no idea where to go. And that's what really angered me and still angers me to this day about the red flag bill.
Right.
Because we knew the bill was going to pass. I hate the law. I hate the bill because it's completely abhorrent to actually helping prevent suicide. So the bill, the red flag law, was supposedly two-edged. One, to identify people who are potentially suicidal and they want to take their gun license away. Two is to identify the potential next mass killer and deal with that. So when it was being debated, when we were going through the discussions, I said, okay, so you're going to take somebody who's potentially suicidal, drag them into court, embarrass them in front of a judge, exacerbate their mental health problem, take their gun license and send them home? Wait a minute, what are you doing for them?
Right.
And I just got blank stares. And you know what their answer was? We'll give them a pamphlet.
Oh, that's nice.
So we know in Massachusetts, because as the data from the state shows, suicide by hanging is more than guns, drugs, and poisons combined. It's almost 3 times as much as suicide by guns. So all you've done is take one means away and send them home to deal with it on their own.
Right.
Not going to happen.
Right.
You know, my great nephew, hanging. So tell me you're going to solve the problem. The other one, maybe even more drastic, is if you've identified the next potential mass killer because they're suffering from such severe mental health that's untreated and undiagnosed, you're just going to take their gun license away and send them home? The judge agrees this person's exponentially dangerous.
Right.
You're going to send them home?
Yeah.
So I asked, wait a minute, can they drive a tanker truck of gas for a living? Can they work in a hospital? Can they work in a nursing home? How about a school? And I was told point blank, well, you can't take away the right to work. Are you serious?
But you're going to take, oh my God.
We just identified Jeffrey Dahmer, and you're going to say, you know, he can work at a school, sure. No, it's unconscionable the way that bill was handled, to the point where, because we knew what was going on and we knew it was going to pass, we filed mental health amendments. 2 days before the bill was debated on the House floor, the advocates of this bill got the title changed from an act to prevent suicide to a gun licensing bill. And then the day of the debates, the chairman, Hank Naughton, stood up on the House floor and said, this is a gun licensing bill. It's not a mental health bill. All mental health amendments will be considered beyond the scope and there will be no discussion. How is that possible that this isn't a mental health discussion?
Right.
It's just unconscionable what they did.
Yeah.
They missed a historic opportunity. I mean, even one of our amendments, simple, was to form a professional commission, not us, professional commission, and tell us precisely what our needs are in Mass. You know, you're a nurse, you've talked about it, the lack of help, or as good as it is in Mass compared to Wyoming, it's still really bad. So tell us what our specific needs are, because the state just throws money at the department and says, here, fix it. No, tell me what we actually need so we can advocate for those specific things. The other piece was, we were horrified to find out Massachusetts did not have its own suicide hotline. So we filed legislation to create what's called a Friends and Family Hotline, because while the Samaritans do a great job, God bless them, they have no comprehension of our laws, and or the services specific to Massachusetts. So we spend, I think the last budget I saw, the state gave the Samaritans $50 million. You're telling me we can't establish that in Mass for $50 million a year?
Right.
Wow. So it's imperative that we know precisely what we're dealing with so we can target it and get out and advocate for it. But it's amazing that they simply don't want to have those discussions. Now, in fairness, I had a couple of state legislators that told me, Jim, if we did right by mental health in Mass, financially it would make the Big Dig look like a picnic. And I get it. But does that mean we shouldn't try?
Right.
You know,
Right.
we shouldn't try.
We're just going to throw our hands up.
Yeah. So it's very infuriating to me that people are out there, you know, with the pitchforks and the torches.
Right.
That, you know, we need to do this.
Right.
Really? You have no credibility in this
Right.
discussion after what you
Right.
did 5 years ago. None.
Right.
Right.
None.
There
So,
was
I'm not passionate about this, am I?
No, I love it. I love it. But there was another woman that was from Moms Demand Action, and she was discussing why. She was basically saying, why are you not following the red flag laws? Why are you guys not using it? Why are you this? Why are you that? You know, so.
Well, thankfully, the chief said there weren't any in his area.
Yeah.
Yeah, the red flag law has hardly been used because, and I tried to tell them this, but they won't listen to it. The whole red flag law was passion. That's all it was passion. It wasn't rational. It
Right.
wasn't people sitting down thinking, what's the best
No,
we can do?
it was
It was
emotional.
after Parkland. We have to do something. Yes, we do, but this ain't it. But it was so passionate and so driven that the legislator had to let it go. So it's just, the red flag law in Massachusetts is kind of useless because our laws allow the police chief to yank your license at any time if they have concerns. Now, that might change a little bit in the future because of the Supreme Court decision, but they can still yank your license anytime. So the
Right.
red flag law was kind of useless. And when I tried to explain that to people, they said, well, the red flag law is in place so that people can do it and not the police because they might be afraid to go to the police. I said, well, if you're afraid to go to the police, why would you go to a court?
Right.
So it made no sense. And most of the red flags that are done, I think last year they had 13. Most of them are done by the police. They're not
Right.
done by
And
the
they're
people.
not even like,
Yeah.
anybody can throw a red flag at anybody.
Yeah.
And they're not even
Yeah.
researching to
Right.
whether or not it's legit.
Well, the other thing too, I think that woman was insinuating, which I've heard before, is why isn't the red flag being publicized? Why isn't it being, educated across the state? Well, Renee can talk to us about things that the state's supposed to do and don't do, right?
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
one of the biggest, the
yeah.
best laws I think that Massachusetts ever came out with were the laws of 2014, those PSA laws.
yeah.
And they're not doing it.
That would be very beneficial.
And on the ride here today to film this, I was on the phone with the legislator. And the 2014 bill, I literally risked my career to make that work. Because people in my community said, no, there is no such thing as a good gun law. Well, there is. And I get viciously attacked by our own people. A year later, they're like, oh, wow, you did a good job. Yeah, thanks, okay. But the tons of that law was about school safety, whether it's mental health or physical safety. None of it's been implemented.
Right.
So we're talking to a couple legislators to hold an oversight hearing on that. If you're doing a top-down review, then let's do a top-down
Right,
review.
right.
I want to know everything that's not been implemented and why it hasn't been implemented.
Someone actually brought that up in the audience.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Where are these public service announcements?
Yeah.
And they couldn't answer.
Nope.
Because there's nobody
No.
on the panel that could speak
No,
to that.
no. So it's an uphill battle, but I think it's coming to a head
Yeah.
because people have had it.
People
you
have
know.
had enough.
They really have.
I
My
know.
question is, all the millions of dollars that come from gun owners that pay to get their license, to get their original license, to get their license renewed, all the millions of dollars we pay for education, because we have to pay for it ourselves, right?
The state doesn't spend a dime on
No.
firearm safety
But where does
education.
all that money go?
Well, according to the law of the $100 fee, $25 goes to the town or city, whatever, for processing. $25 goes to what they call a fingerprint fund. And that's to run your fingerprints through the FBI system. And then $50 goes to the state. So it's, again, ridiculous. In this day and age, the process we have is so antiquated. One of my friends, his son is going to school in Florida, so he got his Florida license by mail in 3 weeks. It was like $20. So why does it take us
Right.
6 months and
Right.
$100 to get a license? in this day and age.
And so even if 50 was going to the state,
Yeah.
you have 500,000 gun owners, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, they collect millions.
that's
About
a
$2
quarter of a
million a year.
million. So
Yeah,
where's
yeah.
the money going?
Yeah, nowhere. We're actually in discussions with the Chiefs Association because they're frustrated too. So we filed a piece of legislation to update the system in what we call just a bookmark. Don't pay attention to the language, it's a bookmark. And what you do is you just file an idea and then you work through the process to come out with something in the end.
Right.
So, but mental health is so paramount right now.
Right.
And of course, we know, and certainly Renee knows even better, that COVID exacerbated mental
Oh, yeah.
health to an nth degree that
Oh, it's
we probably
terrible.
won't even understand for another decade.
No.
Well, to go back to just licensing people, the gun owners, even the chief of police, Matthew Sonnabend, said, he was on the panel, he said it's a burden.
Yes.
It's a burden, and it
Yeah.
certainly is, because
Yeah.
the paperwork that he has to do with every single one and every single licensing police station, it's hundreds
Well,
across
yeah.
the
And
state.
Here's the irony is that when you're looking at just violent crime, according to the FBI, which is 5 categories, but violent crime, when you look at those numbers and adjust for population, which you have to do when you're comparing states, Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, traditionally the 3 safest states in the country
Yep.
every year, they don't have gun licenses. So what's going on in Mass?
Right, they don't have half as many gun laws either.
Massachusetts is so acceptant of violence, it's not even funny.
Right.
They talk a good game, but it's not a good game.
But then they put the criminals back out in the street.
Yeah, well, they don't even.
Slap them on the hand,
Yeah.
put them back out in the street.
Yeah, my
and then
favorite, we
what?
used to do a court watch with Goal, and it was called Deal of the Day or something, you know, we did. And my favorite was a guy in Worcester, he was arrested with a real AK-47 machine gun, eradicated serial numbers, 20,000 bags of heroin, was released on bail. Are you serious?
Did they drop the gun charges?
We don't know.
Because
We-
a lot
we
of
don't know
time,
what happened.
isn't that
Yes.
what they do? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of times they'll drop the gun charges because they're too tough to prosecute. And microphone down.
Microphone down.
Yeah, it wasn't a gun, folks, I swear. But they're too tough to prosecute. If you talk to the assistant district attorneys behind the scenes, they'll never say this in public, but we don't even want to deal with them. Because if you even look at the police blotter, right? You know, you'll see arrested for possession of a handgun without an FID. You can't possess a handgun on an FID.
That
You
blows
know,
my mind.
so
I don't
it's
even
like,
understand that. It's
God
just-
bless the police, but they don't know these laws.
No,
They don't. They can't.
No,
They can't.
They can't.
You know, so it's unfair for everybody involved.
Yeah, it is.
Right,
I
right.
know when I had, you spoke as well, not everybody could speak at the listening tour, which was
Well,
very,
because the
very
panel
disappointing.
spoke for an hour.
Yeah.
So then that only gave the 200 people in the audience 1 hour to speak.
Yeah, it was
Which
crazy.
is ridiculous because if it's a listening tour, you want to listen to the public.
Everybody.
You know.
Well, that's what someone said. They
Everybody.
stood up and said, if this is a listening tour, when are you going to start listening and stop talking?
You know, it's funny because we faced that in the State House for 25 years. It's always aggravated me. When there's a public hearing in the State House, you know, we'll ask people to come in, testify. But the problem is the people who are taking a day off of work to get there, they have to wait till all the government officials are done testifying. I remember sitting in a judiciary hearing, and after 7 hours, they said, okay, we're moving on to a different subject. We won't be accepting any more testimony.
Right.
No citizen got to testify.
Oh,
My argument is, you see these people every day. Go talk to them whenever
Right.
you want.
right,
But the citizens are here to talk to you.
right,
And that should be priority.
right.
But they always say, well, the legislators are busy and they have a good schedule. What about these people? I don't even care if they're with me or not.
Right.
The moms over here want to talk to you too.
Yeah.
And they should be able to.
And I think the most disappointing part of the whole listening tour, for me anyways, is when I got up, I said, all I'm hearing is about the tool.
Yeah.
What about mental health?
Right.
Why are we discussing mental health?
Well,
they don't want
because,
to.
You know?
They don't want to.
Because
Right,
that
exactly.
needs to be, that's the whole premise, is to prevent that.
Thus, the way the red flag bill was done.
Right,
They don't want to talk about mental health. Now this whole thing means matters is now coming out from the other side,
Right.
which is just a smokescreen to talk about guns, because they want to talk about the most lethal means,
Right.
not overall. Because again, suicide by hanging is more than guns, drugs, and poisons combined in mass.
Right.
So they only want to talk about supposedly the most lethal, but not the highest numbers. Because that means if guns are more lethal, which I'm sure they are in suicide attempts, that means it's kind of a flat line.
Right.
You know, these are the people who attempted, these are the people who died. So you get a huge spike of suicide attempts by hanging that are successful 300 times a year. That means there's tremendously more people who are trying to take their own life by,
Right, and
by
failed.
hanging.
And failed.
And failed.
And failed.
So what should we be addressing?
Right.
All of it.
Right.
I'm not saying exclude guns, I'm saying all of it.
All
Right.
of it.
We never talked about hanging at all. We never
Yeah.
talked about
No.
that. That whole meeting was strictly about.
And was a lot of people trying to stand up and protect our civil rights.
Well, it was a lot about, the
And
panel
educating.
The panel was all from organizations that had to do with mental health,
Right.
other than the chief of police. But when Representative Mike Day got up in the beginning, and I'm quoting this, he said, "This tour is about gun safety, gun regulation, and the whole scheme of firearm laws." We didn't cover any of that
No.
at the tour, so I don't
No.
really understand what the point
Well,
was.
I hope that the next listening tour that they have, that they finally, wake up and realize they need somebody that's an expert at this to be on that panel.
And
That's
I'm
not-
not
how can
saying
you-
I wasn't grateful, because we learned a lot
Oh,
about
yeah,
mental health and the
absolutely.
resources in the community that I didn't know
Right.
about prior to that meeting. And because of that, we had Karen Ellery Jones in
Yep.
the last episode from the Samaritans, and she offered a lot of information about the resources available to our communities.
Yeah.
But still, it didn't seem, it was lacking.
Yeah. Well, I think in fairness to Chairman Day, and he kind of admitted this to us, that they rushed this and they should have taken their time, but he said we needed to get started. That the
Yeah.
speaker was on him to get going.
They needed more people,
yeah.
because even the poor woman that lost her sister said, "I didn't know about this until today." And this was such an important topic that,
Yeah.
they needed to provide more.
Yeah, she was a student of the school.
Yeah.
And she said, "We're here at my school, and I didn't even know about this."
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big problem.
Well,
Well-
maybe next time I'll just walk up on stage and sit down.
I
I'd
think
love
that's
that.
a good idea.
I'd
did,
love that.
I did that once during the 2014 work when they were doing a similar tour. And, at least with that tour, it was legislators. You were talking to the
Right.
committee people, right?
Right.
So one time, because they kept getting questions they couldn't answer, so one time when they did a stop on the tour, I just walked up and sat down. And they're like, "What are you doing here, Jim?" I says, "I'm trying to help you."
Exactly. Well, we're definitely running out of time. We've probably got about a minute left, I think. But
And I am so happy I didn't have to take a quiz this time.
I know, we didn't give
Yeah.
you a quiz this time.
Yeah, the pen is proudly sitting on my desk
There
at
you
the
go.
office, so, whenever we get to sign a good bill, we'll use that, right?
So thank you again
yeah.
for joining us. Again,
Yeah.
if you have any questions,
Yeah.
you can always reach us out at sistersinarms2022@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us, and I
And
know.
all these reports are on the Goal website.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
So goal.org, right?
Yep.
Yep.
Goal.org.
All the time. Yep. Stay safe.
And stay vigilant.
That's right.
And hydrated.
And hydrated.